Hello my friends, it's me Andrew Fantasia. Welcome back to the countdown to Bond 25. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and give some love to that subscribe button as well. See this? This isn't a diamond. In fact, I'm pretty sure it's not even a real emerald. But I have had it for almost 20 years. So whatever this stone is, maybe this is forever too. But I'll tell you what definitely is forever. This James Bond movie. Let's get started. Welcome back, my friends. Today we are going to be talking about Sean Connery's last canon outing as James Bond. This is the 1971 classic, Diamonds Are Forever, Forever. Sorry, I have to slip into my Shirley Bassey there when I say the title. Diamonds Are Forever is the last of what I like to refer to in my head as the Blofeld trilogy, because we get 3 movies in a row where Blofeld is our primary villain. In this one, he wants to just straight up build super lasers to shoot at capital cities, so he does this by infiltrating a very complex diamond smuggling ring, stealing the diamonds himself, and then using them to focus the super laser on his satellite and start firing away at all kinds of targets. Pretty straightforward considering the last one was about hypnotizing people to perform germ warfare. Man, I love OHMSS, but that was a weird plot. As I mentioned, the song Diamonds Are Forever is performed during the opening credits by Shirley Bassey. She is the only singer to do multiple James Bond title songs. This is her second one. Her first one was Goldfinger. She's got one more coming up in the late 70s, I believe. But the reason they brought her back was because the studio was trying to recapture the box office magic that was Goldfinger. They got Sean Connery back. They wrote a plot about smuggling. They set it primarily in the United States. They really tried to get the essence of Goldfinger back into this movie because they really wanted to replicate those sweet box office dollars. And I know Diamonds Are Forever did well, and it probably did even better than Goldfinger, accounting for inflation. But in retrospect, a lot more people still love Goldfinger more than they love this one. Here's an interesting first for the series. This is the first time we have an American Bond lady. Jill St. John is stepping into the role of our newest Bond lady. And yeah, this is the first time, folks, that the primary Bond lady has been American. Honey Rider was some weird mishmash of Swiss and Jamaican. Tatiana Romanova was Russian. Pussy Galore, I'm not sure what she was. I think she was supposed to be British. Maybe quasi-German? I don't know, but apparently she doesn't count as American. Dominique Derval was French. Kissy Suzuki was Japanese. Teresa Di Vincenzo was British. So there we go. Our first Lady of Bond, born under the Stars and Stripes. Now I want to throw this in here. It's not actually a first. In fact, it's a last, but I feel the need to bring it up. This is the last appearance of Spectre until 2015. 1971's Diamonds Are Forever gave us Blofeld again as the villain, which meant Spectre was the organization running things. But after this, MGM lost the rights to Spectre and Spectre characters. See, Ian Fleming had this big, long-standing copyright issue with a guy named Kevin McClory, who apparently owned the rights to Blofeld, Spectre, and all the characters who fell under that umbrella. 6 years from now, in 1977, when they make The Spy Who Loved Me, they are going to want to use Blofeld again as the villain, but the legal issues are going to get in their way and they won't be able to. Kevin McClory ends up retaining the rights to Spectre and does not allow MGM to use it. He does sell the rights in the 80s to another company, but that's a story for about a week from now. Finally, in 2013, MGM and the McClory estate would settle their differences, and that's why in 2015, we got Spectre and Blofeld back for the first time in the movie Spectre. But we had to wait since 1971 to see these characters again. I really like the gadgets in Diamonds Are Forever because they are a lot more sneaky and spy-centric than Bond's usual firepower-filled arsenal. First, you have the fake fingerprints. Bond is impersonating a member of the diamond smuggling ring named Peter Franks, and in order to fool his associates, he is wearing fake pads on his fingerprints designed by Q that will let anybody who checks his prints think that he is Peter Franks. What ends up happening? They dust him for prints, and they're like, oh, this checks out. Those are Peter Franks' prints. Yeah, let's do this. Then there's the voice changer machine. It's this big box, really complicated device that you hook up to your telephone, and as soon as you pick up the phone and start speaking into it, you're speaking in a different voice, and the person on the other end doesn't know who they're talking to. I don't know what that voice was. That was just nobody. That wasn't a character. Finally, there's something called an electromatic RPM controller, which Q uses just to cheat at slot machines. So that's what I love about Q. He's in the field, he just has fun, and he doesn't even scoop up his winnings. He's just like, well, I just did 7 slot machines in a row and it works. I told you I never joke about my work, Doggo 7. I mentioned earlier we have our first American Bond lady, and I wasn't kidding. In fact, we have 2 American Bond ladies. First, there's Plenty O'Toole, played by Lana Wood. And yeah, her name is actually Plenty O'Toole. Now, the Wood sisters, Lana and Natalie, were very, very attractive women, and Lana Wood is no exception. She shows up at the craps table in a dress that she was just poured into, and we get the classic line where she introduces herself to James, and she says, "Hi, I'm Plenty," and James looks at her and smiles and says, "Of course you are." Unfortunately, the writers didn't treat Plenty O'Toole as the sharpest O'Toole in the shed, and she was promptly and sadly killed off. Then there's our main leading lady, Tiffany Case, played by Jill St. John. Tiffany Case is not my favorite Bond lady. Again, she's not treated very well by the writers. This happens a lot with Bond ladies, where there's just an inconsistency to the way they act. When we meet them, they are tough, they are cunning, they have a sense of logic to what they do, they just seem like competent human beings, and then as soon as they sleep with James, they just lose all of that, and they just become clingers to James's body, and like, James, save me, oh! That's what ends up happening, unfortunately, with Tiffany Case. And it really feels amplified in this movie because, and this is the perfect time to bring it up, guys, Diamonds Are Forever is kind of a cartoon. The contrast is even stronger, especially because the last movie, On Her Majesty's Secret Service, was such a gritty, almost realistic portrayal of James Bond. This is just a straight-up cartoon. And once we get into the Roger Moore years, it's going to get even more cartoony. So expect characters to act even stupider and expect villains with even more grandiose, wacky personas. Speaking of which, the Rogues Gallery in Diamonds Are Forever is pretty memorable. Starting from the bottom of this food chain and working our way up, we have Bambi and Thumper. These are 2 ladies who are acrobats who are guarding a character named Willard White, who Blofeld has kidnapped. And their whole job is to just hang out in Willard's house and protect him from anybody who comes to try to rescue him. And that's it. Bambi and Thumper just attack James Bond when they see him using gymnastics. They flip around, they jump up on a crossbar, they do somersaults. They are literally trying to kill James Bond with Gymkata. 14 years before Gymkata was a thing. And if you don't know what Gymkata is, please, for the love of God, look up Gymkata. Then we have 2 very colorful henchmen. We have Mr. Kidd and Mr. Wint. Mr. Kidd and Mr. Wint are 2 assassins working exclusively for Blofeld who are trying to infiltrate the diamond smuggling ring by essentially killing every member of the ring they come across. The whole first half hour of Diamonds Are Forever is just a stack of bodies that pile up once Mr. Kidd and Mr. Wint have had their way. Aside from being 2 assassins who trot around the globe ending lives, Kidd and Wint are also a romantic couple. Yeah, these 2 are a thing. And what's baffling is that, considering this is a James Bond movie and an Ian Fleming story, Kidd and Wint are not really treated with any disrespect. Usually gay characters really get the short end of the stick in Ian Fleming stories, but Kidd and Wint are kind of left to their own devices. They're not sinister because they're gay, they just happen to be gay and sinister. There's only one moment near the end where they try to get stupid and silly about it, where James is fighting with Mr. Wint and he kind of grabs his shirt and like pulls it through his legs, and Mr. Wint screams, but the look on his face indicates that he's actually enjoying this. That's when, it gets a little wonky. But other than that, Kidd and Wint are just 2 very competent assassins who run around the world eliminating witnesses. I love these guys. They even get their own theme music, which is really nice. I like to think that there's a world where Kidd and Wint are still alive and we could see them come back, because these 2 are just awesome. Mr. Kidd is played by a guy named Putter Smith, who doesn't act very much. He's a musician. But Mr. Wint is played by Bruce Glover. He's the father of Crispin Glover from Back to the Future, which came out shortly after Gymkata. It's all connected, baby. Finally, we have Ernst Stavro Blofeld back for his 3rd consecutive outing as the main villain. This time, he's played by Charles Gray. Charles Gray is a returning actor from the series. You might have remembered him from back in You Only Live Twice. He showed up as an ally for one little scene where he talks to James Bond and then he gets stabbed in the back. Well, I guess they realized they had a really good actor on their hands and they kind of wasted him, so they brought him back as Blofeld in this movie. Now, the idea is that Blofeld has been undergoing plastic surgery to hide himself from MI6 and the authorities, so that's that's why he has hair. And I guess it's fine because Charles Gray is a great actor, but Blofeld having hair is like Lex Luthor having hair, man. Just don't do it. Just don't do it. Take that hair off. Take it off now. He's also constantly disguising himself. He has body doubles in the film to throw people off the scent. He has that voice changer thing on his phone so he can pose as different characters when he's talking to them. He even, at one point, and again, I have to stress how cartoony this movie is, dresses in drag to escape a casino. Yep, you're seeing this right, folks. That is Blofeld, the primary antagonist of the James Bond series, pulling a Bugs Bunny by dressing in over-the-top drag to escape pursuit. If you're claustrophobic, you're definitely going to find the death traps in Diamonds Are Forever harrowing as hell. Kid and Wint toss Bond into two different traps. One of them is an oil pipe that then gets lowered underground and buried as part of an oil pipeline. He escapes it very easily, but if you're claustrophobic, I'm sure the idea of that messes with your head a bit. But it's nowhere near as terrifying as what they do earlier in the film. There's a whole sequence that takes place at a funeral home. Kid and Wint hit Bond over the head, knock him out, stuff him in a coffin, lock the coffin, and then push the coffin into a cremation machine. And let's be real here, folks. The only reason James Bond escapes this alive is because the diamond smugglers are upset about the fact that they've just been hustled, and they pull him out only to threaten him and say, "Where's our actual diamonds?" If it hadn't been for those people's greed, James Bond would have been cremated alive. And that might be the scariest thing you could ever imagine happening to anybody. The best quote of this movie is one of my favorite James Bond quotes ever, and probably just one of my favorite movie quotes because it's so over the top. The context of what's happening is amazing. It's just all around magnificent. Here's the setup. This diamond smuggling outfit is very, very complex, and one of the many moving pieces of it involves a place called Slumber Inc., a funeral home in Nevada that's run by the mob. Slumber Inc. is a front for the diamond smuggling business. Many of the smugglers use dead bodies to hide the diamonds. The bodies are then cremated. The remains come out. Diamonds are all that's left. Smugglers work their magic. Now, our best quote comes from Morton Slumber, the guy who runs this establishment. He has a very over-the-top, completely formal way of speaking, but he's always trying to be comforting because he's under the guise of somebody who is helping people lay their loved ones to rest. Even though we know this man is a notorious mobster, and he is just running a false operation in which to smuggle diamonds and get rich and be a terrible criminal who hurts people for cash. But he does it all with this formal smile on his face. If you've ever talked to an actual funeral director, they talk exactly like this, but he takes it to 11 and gives this wonderful line of dialogue to James. He handed James an urn from the remains of their dealings. James opens the urn, the diamonds are inside. Morton Slumber instructs him where to place them next. Again, under the guise of being an employee of a funeral home speaking to somebody who just lost a loved one, and he says this: "So we've selected a private niche for you out there in our garden of remembrance. It's the one with the restful chartreuse curtains and the angel's breath gold trim. You can't miss it." That is one of the best lines of dialogue I have ever heard in my life. I just want to work the phrase restful chartreuse curtains into my everyday speech as much as possible. What was the most sexist/racist moment of Diamonds Are Forever? We are in the 70s now, but that doesn't mean they can't still do things kinda wrong sometimes. Well, like I said, the treatment of Kid and Wint, who are gay characters, is for the most part okay up until the very end when they fight with James. But no, I'm giving this award to just the overall character of Tiffany Case. She starts off very competent and cool. She's a criminal. She's a member of this drug smuggling ring. She's using all these tricks and tools to outwit people because she doesn't want to get caught. But you can literally graph where it happens, because as soon as she sleeps with James Bond, the minute that happens, the next day, she is just like, duh, what do I do now, James? She just turns into an idiot. And for the rest of the movie, she's just walking around like, what's happening? What do we do? It sucks. She could have been like this awesome anti-hero who is part of this smuggling operation, but helps James Bond because she's greedy and she just wants to, get her fair share. This could have been such a memorable character, but they threw her away because they still didn't know how to write women properly back then. Of course, Diamonds Are Forever is full of all kinds of little tidbits that just make it an overall pleasant experience. It is. is. It is a really fun Bond film when push comes to shove. We get to see Felix Leiter again. This is our fourth Felix Leiter. He's played by Norman Burton, and he is helping James Bond take down Spectre and the smugglers one step at a time. If Felix is showing up, it's probably because James is in America, and that's exactly what happens. The movie kicks off with him going to Amsterdam for a bit, and then traveling to Las Vegas, where the majority of the film takes place. And I love the way Las Vegas looks. There's a certain aesthetic to the 1970s and 80s, okay? I'm just in love with that aesthetic, and it's really hard to put into words, but it's the aesthetic of the boxy cars, the lack of technology, and you can see it in like the signs of places. Signs didn't look like they were made by computers. They looked like they were made by like a big printing sheet that didn't have graphic design down to a science yet. The walls and ceilings of buildings have this yellow tint of cigarette smoke decay. It's this really cool aesthetic that you only see in these 2 decades, and then it goes away, and I miss it. But you really get a lot of it in Las Vegas. Plus, you get to see Circus, the classic Las Vegas casino, when it was brand new. It was brand spanking new when they filmed all these Circus scenes. It was a big deal to have the film being set there for a bit. From what I hear nowadays, Circus is skippable. You can skip it on the Vegas tour. It is not a great place to be. It's like the Hufflepuff of casinos. Speaking of which, remember how I said that this was a cartoon? There's literally a scene in Circus where an elephant plays a slot machine and it wins. The writer's room was on a lot of drugs. The 1970s also, in my opinion, have the best cinematic car chases ever. You just can't top the car chases the 70s gave us. They're all great. You got Bullet, you got Smokey and the Bandit, you got the Blues Brothers. They're terrific. Go watch any 70s action film. You're going to have a great time. Rubber will be burnt. Dust will be eaten. And in Diamonds Are Forever, James and Tiffany get into a great car chase against the Las Vegas Police Department. This is beautiful, man. This whole scene is just action-packed. It's fast-paced. It's set at night on the Las Vegas Strip, so it's just covered in neon glitz. I love everything about this. This is the best part of Diamonds Are Forever, hands down. Aside from all the funeral home stuff with Morton Slumber and Mr. Kidd and Mr. Wint. That's a spin-off I want. Kidd and Wint hanging out with Morton Slumber. I want to know what that story's like. It's also worth noting that Jimmy Dean is in this movie. He plays Willard White, the Southern gentleman who owns the White House, the casino where most of the action takes place. Willard's character is based off of Howard Hughes, which is interesting because Jimmy Dean, at the time, was an employee of Howard Hughes. I guess that's why they cast him. I don't think that was just a cosmic coincidence. But he is this reclusive billionaire as well who has not been seen for 5 years, and Blofeld kidnaps him and steals his identity with the voice change box. But once he's rescued, Mr. White becomes an ally to James Bond and the CIA, and he's so much fun. Jimmy Dean is a riot. He just struts around in his Texas accent and is like, well, Mr. Bond, what are we going to do about Blofeld? Something's got to be done, and I'll tell you what, if we don't do it soon, there's going to be trouble. I love Jimmy Dean, and he happens to be the guy behind probably the best breakfast sausages in America, so there's that too. If you never tried Jimmy Dean sausages, you're missing out. So yeah, it's a cartoon, it's schlocky, it's campy, and it's only going to get more campy from here on out, but I have to say, I really, really do enjoy Diamonds Are Forever. I have such a soft spot for it. It does a lot of things wrong, but it gets a whole hell of a lot of other things right. And to me, there's always going to be a place in my heart for that car chase, Willard White, Morton Slumber, and Mr. Kidd and Mr. Wint. Tomorrow, say goodbye to Sean Connery. He is out of the picture for the Eon canon films. Now we're entering the campy, colorful world of Roger Moore when the countdown to Bond 25 continues. See you then.